Hi everyone and welcome back to the channel. So I've got a bit of a long video for you. We're basically going to do a video all about planning and how to put a program together. I'm going to base it on myself, so I'll give a bit of a lowdown where I am at and how I look at my programs and how to develop them forward for next year. Yeah, so there's a lot of things to go into this video, so I can't really shorten it, but I'll try and give you some tips on what information I sort of take to develop a program. So first thing I need to look at is what my race calendar is. So I've got a video out already about what I'm potentially doing for next year and what my plans are. Next thing I need to look at is where I'm at currently. So on that note, basically I'm back into training mode now. The Achilles injury that I suffered that's been holding me back for the last 2 years is pretty much near enough gone, and I can start to get some serious training in. Looking at my Strava stats, so just to see whereabouts I'm at, I probably would say I'm probably doing 50-mile training that I would recommend on my a few videos ago about how to train for a 50 miler, and I'll put that link up at the end of this video, I think, if I can. But statistically, I'm on around an average now about 60 miles per week, 6 hours and 44 minutes and 4,000 feet of climbing. So they're not massive numbers, they're not huge statistics for me. Normally I like to be a lot higher than that. For those of you who are watching this and going, well, I'm looking at my first 50 miler and I'm not doing anywhere near that, should I start to panic? No, this is just a more reflection on where I should be. If you're doing your first 50 miler, there's nothing wrong with doing about 4 to 6 hours. But you've got to look at your long run, which I'm going to go to in a second. My distances are going to be a little bit higher, just because I would like to say a bit more experience in there, and I sort of know where the sweet spot is for me, and I know where that's heading. So looking at the long run for me, I actually haven't really reached the long run time frame that I would like to reach to. So I normally encourage people to try and get between that 3 to 4 hours on a long run. I'm actually on about 2.5 to coming up to 3 hours. So I've got a bit of a development process there. So how I develop that program. So before I really start to get into some serious specific training for a certain race, I've got to get that up a little bit more, which I'm hoping to probably get done in the next 4 weeks, where I can get that long run up to that 4 hours, and then that should complete quite a good training block and quite a good training base. If you're doing your first 50 miler and you've got your long run up to that 4 hours and you've got smaller runs in there, that's perfect. Don't need to worry about it. You're doing the right thing. Like I said, I just know whereabouts I like to get to and what my capabilities are. And you will do, once you've done quite a few ultras, you'll start to know what sort of numbers you're looking at and what numbers to fit in without you being too exhausted, and so on. So yeah, not only am I doing the 60 miles, 6 hours and 6 hours per week, I'm also cycling quite a bit at the moment. So I'm probably doing about maybe 4 or 5 hours of cycling per week as well. So those numbers are a little bit higher, but obviously it's the running that's going to get me through these ultras more than the cycling. The cycling is just a basic way to get to work, but it's also a bit of a top up in my train as well, and hopefully I'll start to convert that more into running rather than cycling. But it's quite nice to cross train now and again. So that's my base. So when I flick over to looking at the programming, obviously first part of the program is going to be looking at that long run and increasing that. Then I've got to start looking at next year. Now, most of you will be on a bit of an off season now, and there's nothing wrong with that. You don't have to start kicking in your training to get ready for the next race. I mean, if your race was doing the same as me and you were doing Chester in March, which is when my first 50-mile race is, you probably got about another 4 weeks, really 3 weeks before you have to really start concentrate on it and start building up that mileage up. Me personally, I've been on off season for the last 2 years, so I'm eager to get back out and get some serious training in. And also this is going to be my first 50 miler in 2 years, so I need to get going now and get some serious training in, just to build that fitness up. And if those of you who've seen my challenges for next year, I've got quite a bit of a busy schedule, and quite a hard year of racing coming up. So Chester's in March. I've then got Chester 100, which I think is in May. Got Snowdon. I've got Scotland, 100 miler. Brecon Beacons, 100 miler. My A game race is that 214 mile race across Scotland, or 218 mile, I think it's 214, in August. And then I've got Snowdon at the end of the year, which again is another 100 miles. So I've got a really super busy year, and I sort of need to just kick in that training now to start developing and getting my strength back up leading into August. So that's where I'm at. I know what I've got next year. Now I need to start looking at some of the information on some of these races and go, right, okay, what information do I want to pull out of these races that's going to help me develop a plan specific to those races. Now, obviously, my main aim is always going to be race across Scotland, but there's no point in just jumping straight to that and training for that. The way the race that I've chosen, they're going to be quite a nice steady increase leading up to race across Scotland, but they all have their own little individual challenges that I can sort of train for. So those who are not going to be doing the same race as me next year, I know when I start to go into the individual races and what sort of information I'm pulling out, there might not be a massive interest for you, but you'll get an idea what sort of information I'm looking at that you can pull out of your own research when you're doing it, what you can put into a plan. So first one for me obviously is March. I'm just looking at some notes. So Chester, 50 miles. The first thing I look at is obviously the event while doing it, what's the date of that event? How many weeks have I got leading up to it? And that'll give a bit of an idea. I'm a true believer that there needs to be recovery weeks in there. So every 4th week, I like to have a bit of a recovery week where I reduce by 50%. Obviously, that's not training, that's me recovering. So you might think you've got 9 weeks, whatever ahead, but actually you might only have 2 training blocks in there. So that's something to think about for mine. Also the distance. When it says 50 miles, it doesn't always mean it's 50 miles. It could be 53, 54. It could be a little bit less. You'd be surprised how much, like if it was 53 miles, you might think now, oh, that's only an extra 3 miles. It's not really that bothered. But I can guarantee you when you've done about 40 miles and you've been told there's another 3 miles on top of what the other 10 that you've still got left to do, 3 miles will seem like a lot. I mean, for some people that could easily be about an hour at that point. So there's something to bear in mind and really look into that. And all I do is once I go on to an event, I'll scroll down, I'll look for a GPX file or a map of that course, click on that, and it should give you a proper detailed distance on there. There'll always be a little bit less, a little bit more, but you'll get a bit more of an idea exactly what that race is. So Chester is actually a little bit less. It's actually 48 miles, so it's actually 2 miles less, which again, some people might say that's a bonus, but some people might say they're losing money. But Chester is, especially that time of year, is known to be a very, very muddy, wet course. I've done Chester a few times, so I know the race can start off quite quick. So it's a lot of road sections, hard tarmac stuff. So really nailing my pace and making sure I've got that under control. So rather than me blowing my legs early and having that control is going to be really important in the next training blocks. Then I know there's quite a few fields where it's pretty much can be quite unrunnable if the weather's been really bad and slipping and sliding everywhere. So again, when I put my training plans together, I need to take that into consideration and go, right, okay, so for my long runs or some of my runs, I need to be running in the mud, running in wet conditions, testing out my kit for my feet, make sure I'm not getting touch points or hot points where I'm getting blisters. I can test all that kit out in that scenario. I don't think Chester's guaranteed to be mud all the time. So obviously the next thing I've got to look at is my pace. I'm not going to be able to control when I get to those points in those events because, like I said, it could either be unrunnable or it's going to definitely slow me down. So I need to get used to how long potentially that could take me to get over a certain field to help me put my race plan together and allow that extra time to go, okay, this is how long does it take me to get to this next checkpoint? Does that mean I'm going to be a lot slower? Does that mean I need to carry more kit? Does I need to carry more water? Whatever. So it can give me a bit of an idea from there. Next thing I'm taking off that race is the elevation. Now again, Chester is pretty much flat. It's got 2 big hills in it. I think the total elevation on there it says 849 meters. So I think that's about 2,000 feet. Not crazy amounts in there, nothing I'm too concerned about. But again, I can still sort of personalise and perfect my training plan by adding that type of elevation into my long run. 2,000 feet is not crazy amount of elevation, and it's definitely doable to put in that long run. But I could go that step a little bit further if the plan and everything progressing goes right. I could go, right, okay, what is the incline of Helsby? And I try and find and replicate that hill somewhere in my training plan, so I get used to doing it. I've already mentioned that Chester's quite flat to start off with, and then you've got some hilly sections in the middle. So maybe in my long run, I could maybe add those hills near the end of my workout or somewhere in the middle. So I just get used to running really well, probably quite a good pace, and then getting whacked on the hills and get my legs used to doing that, and then maybe trying to run back on the flat again, because again Chester has the Canal Doom, which again becomes flat, quite muddy, but you should be able to get the pace back up a little bit again. So again, I can start to work on that. Obviously I know that isn't Race Across Scotland training, but the way my plan will go, I think that will be quite a good gradual increase for me personally for being out so long, and then we can look at the next stage. So after that, I think in May it's Chester 100. So again, similar course, even though it's later in the year, the conditions should be better and the ground should be getting better, but I'm still expecting quite muddy sections in there. The elevation isn't that much. Chester is 2,388 feet, so about another 300, 400 feet there. Again, still can add that into my long run. I still think that's achievable in there, but again, it's basically pace and getting that consistency in that training for that one. And then after that, we've got Scotland. This is when things start to spice up a little bit when it comes to elevation. Again, I've got to look through research, I've got to look at photos and look at that course. Lucky enough, when my Achilles finally gave up on me was on the Race Across Scotland, which is the same course, so I sort of get an idea what that's like. And again, that can be not tarmac, but more like gravelled paths. Obviously there's going to be lots of fields and baby head stuff, and obviously it's got some real good open free to the elements hills in there as well. So luckily for me, the area that I live in Shropshire, we have a great area called Church Stretton, which is one of the beauty spots in the UK, but it's perfect for Scotland training because it's very similar ground, and there's plenty of places where I can get that practice in there. Obviously by that point I need to be way off the roads by that point, and getting off that type of tarmac and that type of terrain and getting into those training elements and those training terrain to train for that one. But the elevation for Scotland is nearly 15,000 feet. Now, I'm not going to be able to get 15,000 feet in a long run. I think that's going to be unrealistic to look at. So I need to look at my weekly training plan and see how much elevation I can add in and get close enough to that number ready for that event. I might be miles off it. Remember, it's personal to you. You're doing as much as you can for your training plan is going to make you better from there. If you can fit in 14,000 feet, amazing. But make sure it's not just big jumps. I'm going to be doing it gradual. I think I'm going to be a little bit off that, quite a bit off that. I would say maybe I might get 6,000 feet in. But again, until I put it on paper and actually looked at the progression, I won't actually know that. Now with Scotland starting to increase up and Brecon Beacons after that one, the elevation goes up quite a bit. So maybe when I get to Chester and I'm between Chester 50 and Chester 100 mile race, the training block in between that, I might be able to start adding in some serious elevation gain, because I should be at that point at a good base fitness and base for 100 miler anyway for time on my feet as well as distance. I should be then start to look at elevation and start doing that as my gradual increase. I'm not going to have time to really work on pace. I think it's all going to be about elevation and getting my legs used to that, so I'm not suffering for so long. But again, till I got it on paper, I won't actually know what that looks like. And when I get it on paper, I can sort of really get a good idea of what fitness I'm going to be at maybe a month before Race Across Scotland, and have an actual idea what strengths and weaknesses I'm going to go with, and that might again change my plan when it comes to Race Across Scotland. But again, when I put it on paper, I'll show you that. So after Scotland, we're into the Brecon Beacons. One thing I didn't mention about the other two races, and including this one, they're not just 100 milers. I mean, Chester 100 and the Brecon Beacons are 103 miles. So again, like I said, 3 miles sounds like a lot for someone who's doing 50 miles extra, especially when you get near the end. On 100 miles, it's going to feel even worse doing an extra 3. Scotland's actually 108 miles, makes a massive difference. I mean, that's easily a good hour and a half, maybe 2 hours there, maybe more for some people. So it's something to think about when you put your plans together. Brecon Beacons is 23,000, nearly 24,000 feet. again, it really jumps up then. So again, I'm not going to be able to fit that in a weekly training plan. I might be able to fit that into a training block. Back-to-back runs are going to be really important for that one, just to get my legs used to being on really hilly ground and getting used to walking. You know, that's going to be a big one there, but we'll see how much elevation I can actually get together again when I put it on paper. After that, in August, we've got the big one, the Race Across Scotland. So obviously this is the multi-day event. That's what literally I'm training for the whole time. And like I said, when I put it on paper, I'll be able to exactly see how far I should be able to get to on regards to elevation training, as well as the distance per week and time on my feet, and what my pace is going to be for the actual race event, or hope to be. What we also got to take into consideration leading up to that point is every time I do an event, say for example I do one of these 100 milers, there are obviously going to be recovery weeks in there afterwards. And I know for Scotland and Brecon Beacons, I think there's only about a 4 weeks window in between it. So I might not get actually much training in between those. I might literally be just maintaining and a bit of recovery. So again, that is something I've got to think about and go, okay, does that make the rest of my program change slightly? And I might have to take a little bit of risks with some of the increases in elevation, but rather than following the 10% rule, I might have to be a bit crazy and go up. But again, put it on paper and I'll work it out. Obviously, Race Across Scotland is several days of running, so I've got to work out how my training plan is going to work, and the terrain is going to be pretty much the same as the others. Obviously, we're going to have some monster hills in there, but I need to be getting my legs used to multiple days of running. So, you know, yes, we've got back-to-back days, but it's probably going to be 3 days of back-to-backs, I reckon. Just getting my legs used to running long distances over several days, and that's what will kick in. And that probably will start maybe between Scotland and Brecon Beacons, or afterwards. But you know, these 100 milers that I'm doing leading up to Race Scotland is gonna do some good for me. It's gonna give me some good confidence, and it's gonna build some real good base fitness in these legs anyway for doing so much. And then after Race Across Scotland, obviously I've got my final race of the year, which is going to be Snowdon. It's actually a little bit less elevation on that one, but it is technical. It's in the mountains, and again, once Race Across Scotland finishes, Race Across Scotland finishes, then I need to look at transferring myself to the mountains and getting used to going up and down mountains rather than just up and down the hills, and that makes a massive difference to training. That's basically the information. So I'm looking at elevation, I'm looking at the terrain, I'm looking when it is, and I'm looking at the actual distance. They're the main things that I'm pulling out of races from there. Obviously, there's lots of other information when I'm starting to nitty gritty about the course and directions and where to go and so on. But for training plan purposes, they're the main subjects that I'm looking at. You've got to be realistic when you do these training plans. It's very easy to write down what you think you can do by a certain point, but you've got to expect things not to go as to plan. So most of the programs that I do, even for myself, are probably about 4 weeks long, but I can have an idea where I think it's going to get to, but I've got to accept that that's not always going to run that smooth. And I'm going to accept that I'm not going to be able to do any speed work, so I'm not going to be able to increase my pace massively. My distance that I'm increasing now is going to go down. When I start to add in more elevation, obviously the time on my feet is going to be probably about the same, but the distance is going to go down because I'm going up more, so there's going to be a lot more walking. Again, got to accept that, but I'd rather have my legs strong on the elevation so I'm not getting beaten up all the time, rather than having to concentrate about speed or overdoing it and re-injury, or just being absolutely exhausted all the time, which is not going to help you when it comes to these events and races. So yeah, that's the information I pull out. So what we'll do now is I'm going to show you on a bit of paper what the program's going to look like for me personally, and where I think I'm going to be over the next period of months, and see what goals I'm going to set myself over a period of time, and see how I'm going to get there. Okay, so I'm trying to do this on my computer to record it, but obviously the light on the screen is not going to be great, so I do apologise if it's not quite clear. But obviously the first thing I'm looking at, just to explain the table I've done, which is really basic, is on the left hand side we've got the weeks of that training block. Obviously I do blocks of 4 weeks, but there's no reason why I can't write down 7 weeks while I'm including that rest week, and then across the top Obviously, if you haven't worked it out already, it is the days of the week, so Monday to Sunday. And then on the right-hand side, I put total time of running, and how much feet I've climbed that week or potentially. So all I've done on that first week is wrote down what I've been doing currently. And that will give me a starting point of where I want to build that block. So I actually had a recovery week the week before this. And then I've repeated my week 3 of the last training block onto week 1, just to get a bit of consistency in there on from there. And again, this is all in miles. Now for week 2, obviously at this moment in time, all I want to do is increase the amount of time that I'm running. And I'm going to do that by just increasing it by, well, half an hour. So I'm going to do 7 hours of running. So that's the first thing. I still want to keep my elevation the same. That might change a little bit because obviously if I'm running further, it might add a bit more elevation on it, but it's not going to be my main focus. And I'm not going to try and increase tons of elevation. That's not the purpose. But what I do want to do is obviously increase my running time. So for me at the moment, Monday's a rest day, and so is a Thursday. And then we're looking at the week. And what I've done is I've already worked out what I want to do is, again, I'm going to keep that at 7 miles. My longest run is actually the one that's going to climb up, so getting around 21 miles. Friday is a 7, that one's a 6, and the other one's a 10. So I know how many miles it can take me to cover a certain distance, so I know what minute split I can do. So that's how I can work at that 21. I know in that half an hour I can add on about another 2 miles onto that longest run. Obviously my longest run at this moment in time isn't at the 4 hour mark, so I knew I had a bit of breathing room there, and that's the one I'm going to increase. Again, moving into week 3, I'm still want to increase a little bit more, so again I'm just going to keep it nice and simple. I'm going to go up to 7.5 hours. So again, add in another 30 minutes onto my run. Again, still going to have that 3,500 feet of elevation. Again, it's not my focus to increase that just yet. And again, we're going to look at the week. So again, really easy. I know that's my rest day, and that's my rest day. And again, pretty much very standard. So again, 7, longest run's going to increase to 23. I've got my rest day there, 7, 6, and 10. So you can start to see the process already of how I'm increasing my weeks. All the runs in this one are super easy. I'm not including any speed work. I'm not increasing, doing any elevation work or hill reps. I've kept it all real, simple, easy effort runs. And the reason for that is I'm still increasing distance or increasing time on my feet. There's no point in doing that plus increasing speed or doing speed work or increasing elevation, because that's just one way to getting injured. Focus on one point first. Once you've got your total distance that you would like to cover, then you can look at other things like elevation or speed, depending on what you want to get better at. Again, this is just for me as my program. Some people might only have 1 rest day a week. I probably will end up only going down to 1 rest week, but that's going to be a lot later on. Let's just talk about that 4th week. So for me, I really keep it nice and simple. I just do a simple 50% deduction in my training mileage. And all I'm simply going to do is, again, keep those days as rest days. And I'm just going to cut every run down by 50%. So I actually keep these ones, because these are total mileages that I want to cut down. So this will be 12 roughly. This is actually going to be a rest day, not a 5. Don't know why I put that there. Then that's still going to be, I'm actually going to then cut these guys down, 3 and 5 there. So again, can I keep them real simple? I don't even add a time on this one. I just want to keep it nice and easy. I don't want to put any pressure on myself. It's all about just keeping the legs moving, but again, I'm getting plenty of recovery there. Again, the elevation will obviously go down at that point. Then moving into week 5, I normally repeat week 3 again, just to give me a bit of consistency. And that's basically it. That's all I do when I'm increasing my distances. That's a simple program like that. Obviously, when we start to look at elevation, what increasing and hill reps and speed work, that comes a little bit later on. That gets a little bit more complicated. But if you're just increasing mileage at this moment in time, that is as simple as it can get. Obviously, on my longest run, I'm still looking at the terrain. I'm trying to match that when it comes to my race prep. I still want to be doing that. Chester is quite a bit of mixture of things of boggy fields and then some road stuff, so a lot of road stuff at the moment. long run, try and get in there a bit of elevation in there and get into some fields that are a bit waterlogged, just to get my body used to it, and then keeping everything related to that race. And that is pretty much how I do programs. Okay, so this video is taking me absolutely ages to do. Not because there's so much information, but because it's been so long to get all the videos together. So I've actually, the training program I'm just showing you, I'm way ahead of that now. That was literally way before Christmas. Things have been going really well. Obviously those training blocks have stayed the same. I'm pretty much up to where I want it to be for Chester. It's just, again, now just working on a bit more of an increase in total distance that week. But I'm still following the same process. Now, with every program, there's got to be flexibility in it, which I've already mentioned. I haven't stuck to that plan as which is what I've put on paper already. And I literally, as soon as I did this program, I think the second week went out the window a little bit, just because something got in the way, something got in the way, work got involved, and I had to go and work instead. These programs are going to happen like that. It's never going to work exactly how you planned it, but that's okay. Keep it flexible. Try and move it around a little bit the best you can. If you didn't quite make a week, finish it, you just repeat that week, add that in there, and change it for the week after. And then you just, you're delaying your program a little bit, as in you're moving it up a little bit. That's just the way it is. The worst thing you can do is go, okay, I would have done that week. I'm going to go stick to my plan and do the next week, which is, again, maybe a 60-minute increase in your total distance when you haven't even done the 30-minute increase. That sort of stuff is when you can fall into some bad traps and you get yourself into fatigue or injury. I worked out, if my plan goes to plan, which already is not, just get a piece of paper, is where I'm going to be all the way up to around about June. So this will be interesting when we do a video in June, is actually how far off. So I've worked out, again, I'd be doing 10 hours of running, but my elevation that I would be increasing by that point be around about 11,000 feet per week. So it'll be interesting to see if I can actually achieve that. Obviously, there's a lot of events involved in between all that, which is then going to be recovery weeks. And I looked at that and I went, oh God, actually it's not where I want it to be, but it's just the way it is. It's all I can fit in. I'm not going to go crazy and do too much too soon. These got to be progressive. I might end up doing better. Most likely I'll probably do a little bit less than that, but we'll see how the next couple of weeks go. So yeah, that's how I put programs together, just by increasing distance. Like I said, when it gets to adding elevation on and adding speed work, that gets a little bit more complicated because they're tough sessions, and sometimes just add a bit of variety in there, another method that you can use to get those fitness goals in there. And I'll just show you all that when I get to that stage. I don't think, just looking at my program here on the floor, none of my speed work actually starts to increase probably till after Chester. I do actually on this program start to look at a little bit of elevation increase in beginning of February. So when I get to that stage, I'll probably will just literally do a quick video on how I look at elevation, but really in simple terms, I just increase it by 10% like I would with mileage and slowly build it back up there. Again, easy as that. If I had Snowdon, or if I had a really mountainous race coming up, then the whole program would probably look slightly differently, in the sense of, yes, I'll build up my base fitness up to a certain point, exactly the same way, but then I might start to really include runs in Snowdon or some hill reps. But the way my training blocks in, the way my races are panned out and how they progressively get harder as the year goes by, I've got time to build up that. I don't really need to do excessive things like hill reps and stuff like that. I can just include it into my long run and get my legs used to running on terrain that's changing all the time. Cool. So I eventually got that video out. I know it's been a long one. I do apologise. I'm sure there's loads of questions. If there is, give me a shout. I do apologise it was been a long one, but it's no other way I can do it. It's probably the longest video I'll ever do. And then after this, like I said, I'll do some videos on elevation and speed work, and then just do little snippets from there. Cheers everyone. Thanks for watching. As always, see you soon.